This is Saturday Agenda with Chris Kenny.
Hello, welcome to the program. After what's been a crazy, divisive and fairly grubby week in national politics, the leadership dogs are barking again. But Prime Minister Julia Gillard, she's focusing on education and delivering those Gonski reforms. And towards the end of the week, of course, had a bit of a victory in that regard. To talk about these issues and more, I'm joined from Melbourne by the Liberal member for Higgins, Kelly O'Dwyer. Thanks for joining us, Kelly.
Great to be with you, Chris.
And I should say I'm bringing the program to you this week from Adelaide. So joining us from Sydney is the Labor member for Chifley, Ed Husic. Thanks for joining us, Ed.
Morning. Do I have to say it's great to be with him? I'll do
You
it. It's great to be with you, Chris.
Great. Well, of course, Ed, you wake up as a Labor MP to yet more leadership news in the newspapers, and I suppose that's why it's not such a great start to the day for you. The latest development reported on the front page of The Australian suggests that the AWU, the Australian Workers' Union, the very influential right-wing union that really was key to getting Julia Gillard into the job in the first place, is softening its support at the very least for the PM. National Secretary Paul Howes has said that his members are really free to vote for whoever they like should there be a leadership ballot. Is this a very worrying sign for the Prime Minister?
Well, I think as a journalist you should have a Ron Burgundy moment, and Sid and Tom and Troy had theirs this morning. I mean, they were saying we've been handed an urgent and horrifying news story, look at me, and then they announced what they did in The Australian. And for three reasons I think it's unspectacular. One, can I use that word unspectacular? I'll use it here. It's Saturday morning, I can get away with it. One, you know, Paul is not saying anything that he didn't say earlier in the year. I mean, he in effect said expressed similar sentiments. Two, I think Paul's also said publicly if he had his time again, he probably wouldn't have gone on and made some pronouncements in the way that he did vis-a-vis Lateline. And three, even if, well, the AWU, it's a statement of fact. I mean, you know, unions won't know that it's counterproductive to, you know, to express a very firm view on these issues. But as an individual, would this stop Paul Howes from expressing his firm view that he backs the PM as he said all along? You know, no. I mean, you know, if he's saying otherwise, you know, we're going into invasion of body snatcher territory, or we've cloned Paul Howes, and I think we can all agree one's enough.
Yeah. Yeah, so you're dismissing the story then, but isn't the language important? And of course,
no.
There is a lot of information and open talk about the fact that, of course, Bill Shorten, the former AWU boss and now the key factional ally of the Prime Minister and supporter of the Prime Minister, is coming under enormous pressure to tap her on the shoulder. So surely there is some significance in the sort of very wishy-washy language coming from Paul Howes.
Oh, well, we're going to reheat that meal a few more times. I mean, the thing is, Chris, and I'm sorry, I don't mean that. I know you've got to, you know, put the point forward, but, you know, people have been, you know, slicing and dicing Bill's words all week, and now we're doing it with Paul Howes. I do not see anything, as I said, it's spectacularly unspectacular what was on the front page. I know by taking such a strong line in reaction to the story, I've probably got federal Labor MPs throwing their coffee mugs across the room saying now we're going to have the Australian report negatively on us, you know. But I just don't see that, you know, this is anything different to what Paul said previously. They've had some comment about the SDA, that they would have said that time and time again. You know, people have made their minds up. You know, they'll talk to people, there'll be union officials that have a view, but ultimately caucus members make their view, and they've done it twice.
But you're not seriously suggesting that there is not a lot of discussion among your colleagues about what will unfold this week and whether or not the key factional and union support for the Prime Minister has diminished over the past couple of weeks?
Well, I'm not going to come on your show and insult your intelligence or the intelligence of the viewers in terms of, you know, obviously people would be talking about all the coverage that's been, you know, around this week. But I, for one, just don't, you know, like I've said this publicly and privately, I just don't believe necessarily that what's you know, being touted is going to happen. I think the caucus has made its mind up. It's made a decision on this. Move on.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of sense in what you're saying. Anyone who wants to suggest that they can predict what's going to unfold with any certainty is having a lend of us. Kelly O'Dwyer, it's going to be an interesting week for the opposition as well, trying to keep its focus on the issues of the week rather than this sort of turmoil in government ranks.
Well, absolutely right. I think we can all be completely distracted by the sideshow, and what a sideshow it is. At the moment, we have who is going to be Prime Minister of this country as a day-to-day proposition. And unfortunately, it seems to be a decision that will be determined by factional warlords in the ALP or the Faceless Men, not by the people of Australia. And we know that if in fact there is a change from Julia Gillard to Kevin Rudd, a reversing of the position that was taken a number of years ago when the current Prime Minister, knifed Kevin Rudd, well, we know that it's simply going to be more of the same. I mean, Kevin Rudd, of course, was the Prime Minister who made so many poor judgment decisions. He was the one who changed border protection laws, and we've now seen more than 43,000 people arrive by boat. He was the person who ensured that we changed our fiscal position from one that was delivering surplus after surplus to delivering deficit after deficit, more than $192 billion and counting now. He was the one who put
Kelly O'Dwyer, we understand those points, but of course, and what I want to come to a little bit later is some of the shambolic, divisive politics we've seen this week during the middle of the week. But firstly, I want to get a reaction from you from what's been a success for the Prime Minister this week. She was trying to get the focus back onto education. She's managed to get another Labor state, the South Australian state government, to sign up to her Gonski reforms. And now there are suggestions that in your home state, the Liberal Premier, Denis Napthine, is suggesting that he's perhaps willing to sign up to the Gonski reforms too. So the Prime Minister is getting some traction and some success on her education agenda.
Well, I wouldn't go so far as to say that. I mean, she's only had 2 states sign up, and you've got a Labor state premier in Tasmania saying we simply don't have enough detail to be able to make a decision on what is being put forward by the government. And that's true of the Victorian premier as well, who said he's not going to sign up to a deal that's not in the best interests of the state. He said that he needs more detail. He needs to know exactly what is being promised. And it seems that the Prime Minister is making sort of wild promises about future funding arrangements 2 elections from now, promises that she can't deliver. I mean, we know we can't even rely on the Prime Minister to keep her promise weeks out from an election. The carbon tax was one perfect example of that. So I can understand why the Victorian Premier is very sceptical about the claims and promises being made by the current Prime Minister, when we know, in fact, we're going to see a reduction in education funding for schools if the
but hang on a
Gonski
second,
scheme is implemented as she's promised.
Denis Napthine is saying that he's open to a deal, that he's looking at it, and he may in fact sign one if it's good enough. The first state to sign on was the biggest state in the country and is a Liberal state government. So you have to concede that the Prime Minister is actually making progress on her education reforms. If she can sign up Victoria, it'll be quite a substantial win for her.
Well, I mean, let's see if that happens. The majority of states haven't signed up. So I, in fact, think that 6 months out from new funding coming into play, I mean, schools are making decisions now about how it is that they're going to fund their teachers and their school programs going into next year. We still have no certainty and no understanding. No regulations have been released. I mean, this is the great farce of what the Prime Minister has put forward. During the last week of Parliament, she rushed through 72 pages of new amendments. We were given less than 90 minutes to debate those amendments before it was gagged. The debate was gagged by Rob Oakeshott, supported by the Labor Party, because the Prime Minister didn't want any further analysis of quite radical changes that were contained within those amendments. Those amendments now mean that the Commonwealth Minister can reach into state, independent and Catholic schools to sign off on their national plans. This is quite unprecedented.
Ed Husic, you must be pleased about the education agenda, but you must be wondering why on earth the Prime Minister couldn't keep the national focus on this agenda during the week instead of going off on other frolics.
Oh, I think I am very supportive of the discussion on education, because it means something tangible and real in my part of Western Sydney, Chris. I mean, the reality is that we are at a point where we need to have a fresh look at how we fund education from the Commonwealth level, working with the states. And everyone agrees if there's a way in which we can focus on need, improve teacher quality, give more strength to principals in the way that they operate. And I've seen firsthand as an MP that the way a school performs is very much influenced and shaped by the quality of senior leadership within schools. And these are all good things. Now, we've had states make decisions on the basis of what's in the best interest for their state. It's why I've publicly commended Premier O'Farrell on the decision that he and the New South Wales government took. We've had, obviously yesterday, South Australia, and we've had the ACT. I mean, Kelly made the point about Tasmania. It's only natural for states to ask questions, to get more detail about impacts on them. But undoubtedly, in terms of having this National School Improvement Program, Chris, this is a good thing in terms of the scope of what's being proposed, and it is vital that we get this this push through so that we can ensure that we got a better way in which we fund education, the way we support it. It's why so many people have gotten on board.
It's only a good thing, though,
there'll be an
isn't it?
ongoing. There'll be an ongoing focus on that issue in coming weeks. Obviously, the Prime Minister will want to try and stay on that. But I want to refresh our memory now about some of the politics of the week and talk about how that's unfolded. And I'll go firstly, of course, to Julia Gillard addressing this question of leadership.
How confident are you that you'll lead the Labor Party to the next election?
Completely. I will certainly be leading Labor at the next election. Yes, there's rumour mongering and speculation. It's wasted breath.
And we talked earlier about the importance of the AWU and its former chief, Bill Shorten, in terms of this leadership issue. Here's how he dealt with it during the week.
I support her and I continue to support her.
Will Julia Gillard lead Labor to the next election?
Yes, I believe so.
There you go. That's Bill Shorten's saying he believes the Prime Minister will lead the party to the next election. But I want to go to the next issue, and that is when the Prime Minister gave her speech to the Women for Gillard organisation that was launched on Tuesday. And this is where I say that the Prime Minister wants to keep the debate supposedly on education and the education reforms, but she went off on this frolic. Have a look.
I invite you to imagine it. A Prime Minister, a man with a blue tie, who goes on holidays to be replaced by a man in a blue tie. A Treasurer who delivers a budget wearing a blue tie. To be supported by a Finance Minister, another man in a blue tie. Women once again banished from the centre of Australia's political life.
Well, I'm wearing actually a purple tie today, not a blue tie. But Ed Husick, I know you're not wearing a tie at all.
What a
It is
fetching
indeed.
tie.
Now, and you've taken the
You're
safe
such a
option
rebel,
today and
Ed.
not worn a tie.
You can go back on the
Ed-
videotape. Hang on a second, Chris. You can go back on a Saturday morning. I ain't wearing a tie. Like, it's the weekend.
Okay, but the point here is, Ed Husick, is this is exactly the reason, isn't it, why so many caucus members are losing faith in Prime Minister Gillard?
What, 'cause of blue ties?
Well, no, well, exactly. Instead of keeping the national debate on serious issues like education and the reform agenda on disability services, she goes out to try and start some sort of phony gender war.
Oh, I think, look, can we just sort of now, it's been dealt with in a very light-hearted way through the course of the week. I think, in terms of the
been
whole
ridiculed.
blue tie thing, and I notice you're trying to egg us on, Kelly, with your, is that blue that I can see on the
That is
monitor?
blue. It is blue.
Who do you follow in the AFL?
North Melbourne.
Oh, there
But
you
don't,
go.
don't distract. Don't distract.
I'm not distracting.
They
I
also wear
just-
blue.
but-
Oh wow! Don't distract.
Ed-
We're going back to questions that are inherently distracting. So yes, no, we shouldn't.
but
They're the Prime
that's the
Minister's
point. That Ed,
statements,
Ed Husick, this is the serious point, though, isn't it? It's the Prime Minister that's distracting you and your government from the serious issues.
I can distract myself quite well, so I will leave your question at that. But I just don't, If we're going back to this issue that's already, as I said earlier in reference to another point, we're reheating dinners that we've already done before. I mean, I just don't see the point, frankly.
All right, well, we'll just go to one other grab from the Prime Minister from the same speech and a much more serious issue. Here's what she had to say about abortion.
We don't want to live in an Australia where abortion again becomes the political plaything of men who think they know better.
Well, Kelly O'Dwyer, I didn't know that there was a political division in this country on abortion, but it looks like the Prime Minister wants to start a debate.
Well, she's trying to drive a wedge. She is, in fact, trying to start a non-existent gender war, and I think she's trying to do that for two reasons. One is because she can't stand on her record as Prime Minister, and two, she wants to use gender as a shield to stop people from quite properly and rationally analysing what her time has been like as Prime Minister and what her record has been. She has nothing positive to say. And that is why this week she raised this issue again. It's not the first time she's raised the issue of gender, and I very much suspect it won't be the last time. But I would agree with Ed, it is quite a distraction. I don't think he can dismiss it as lightly as he does, because it comes out of the Prime Minister's own mouth, and it's clearly something. No, well, you're trying to pretend as though this is not an important issue. It's something the Prime Minister said is a critical issue for the nation.
Well, you think blue ties are an important issue?
No. The Prime Minister said that. The Prime Minister said it. It's not my words, it's your Prime Minister. And I think the very fact that you don't want to defend what it is that she has said this week indicates your lack of faith in her judgment, which I think, frankly, is shared by the broader Australian population.
Just briefly, if we can wrap up, I do want to go back to you then, Ed Husic, with essentially the same question linked to that abortion issue. And is this the Prime Minister knocking your own government off the serious issues that you'd rather be debating?
Well, I think there are a number of elements about and I said this through the week, there are a number of areas where, in terms of public policy, the positions taken by the respective parties that do have an impact on women should be discussed. Absolutely. I expressed a view about, I certainly don't think that in terms of discussing abortion, I'm not, going to the heart of the substantive issue itself, but I think, the community by and large is, we've all sort of reached an agreement or understanding about the matter, and I just don't see the point in reigniting debate. I don't want to see an Americanisation of our political debate where this issue has to always be debated and reopened, and I don't think it's good for us to go through that point. Now, the PM had a response to what I said through the week, and I totally, in terms of what the PM said, she's absolutely right. The PM has lived through debates that have been held under the Howard government on this, and I think by the end of the week we've all reached an understanding. The opposition's responded. People know what our position is. Let's move on.
Indeed. All right, thanks very much for your time today, Ed Husic from Sydney and also Kelly O'Dwyer from Melbourne. Appreciate you both joining us. I'll be back after the break with Samantha Maiden in Canberra.